Good afternoon, everyone. Jamie's not here, as you can see, so I've taken over his late lunch show. So before we get kicked off with today's episode, just a big shout out to our sponsors, Grow. So this one, it says, "I'm beautiful inside and out," apparently. And today's piece for me is can you see that? It's a caramel slice, so that weighs an absolute ton. So I'm probably going to need a lie down this afternoon. Also, a big shout out to Bold Mango Media for sponsoring the show and hosting us in this wonderful studio and next door as well. As you'll see, Bruce, it's on today. We were just in there a few minutes ago, and it's some setup they've got in here. So let me introduce Bruce to the show. I'll let him do a bit of an introduction of who he is and where he is from.
Okay, good afternoon all. I'm Bruce Stephen. I'm a reader in the Department of Electronic and Electrical Engineering at the University of Strathclyde, where I've worked since April 1999. And I started as a proverbial knee-high. In that time, half of my life almost, I've worked on a variety of intelligent systems applications, developments in power and energy systems, all the way from big generation, your nuclear, cutting-edge renewables, all the way down to your smart meter in your house via your transmission and distribution networks.
A bit of everything then, yeah.
A bit of everything, yeah. But then, that's energy systems. They are a bit of everything.
And you've been doing AI before AI was even known as AI, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, so, well, there's always that saying, AI has many fathers.
Yep.
What is it, more godfathers than Snow White? Is that the right one? Anyway, it comes from signal processing, it comes from control, it comes from neuroscience, it comes from statistics, and you draw a bit from each, and you learn a bit from where else it's been applied. So
So how did you actually get into all this back? Because was it 26 years? Did you say it was?
So 26 years in AI in general, but maybe 21 years in power and energy systems applications. So, as I say, I started off, it was around about the time of the dot-com boom. And for some reason, I didn't want to do software development for a living. I would rather have done research, wanted to make things that people used. And for a couple of years after that, I made kind of prototypes of things that, have kind of become commonplace. Things that looked like WebEx, things that looked like the Amazon recommender systems,
right,
that you got at the time. But around about 2004, I'd got to the end of doing a PhD while I'd been simultaneously working as a research assistant, and I wanted to do proper applications that people were actually going to adopt and put into production systems. And I came to work for our Advanced Electrical Systems group at the University of Strathclyde. It was Professor Stephen MacArthur and Professor Jim MacDonald, who'd led that for a number of decades prior to my joining. And first project I did was with Scottish Power, and it was on Scottish Power, what is now Scottish Power Energy Networks, and it was on trip coil current monitoring for understanding the health of switchgear.
Right.
And it was switchgear at distribution level, so it wasn't like really glamorous. These were decades-old assets which operatives had been going into and dismantling and repairing and retrofitting and putting back into service and making sure that they reliably served distribution networks for
aging assets and aging equipment.
Assets, legacy equipment. Legacy equipment, but suddenly this disruptor came in. There was this new piece of equipment made by, I forget the name, Northern Ireland-based Kelman, who became Kelvitech, who became Camelin.
Okay.
And it was, what they found was they could do some routine maintenance operation on the circuit breaker by just tripping it, and you could connect this device and it would produce a little waveform. And the waveform, if you were a super intense circuit breaker expert, you could tell exactly what was wrong with that circuit breaker just by looking at the waveform.
A tiny little signal that's come through.
Yeah, from that tiny little signal. Unfortunately, there's only like a handful of these really highly experienced domain experts that could interpret those signals.
Yeah.
So my job was to provide an information system which allowed you to get the domain expertise into the field and get the data out of the field back to the domain experts to look at the trip coil traces that were getting gathered on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So this was like, I think to this day, this remains to be like the holy grail of asset management and data analytics.
The foundations.
It was that was the thing I really wanted to do. How can you make a low-cost test give you high-value insight?
Well, that's what it's all about. When it comes to the end user, it's all about the value they get back. So whether that's financially or making the processes more efficient, or even just understanding that data, because that tiny little signal gives so much information to help keep these old aging assets going. Without having that knowledge and understanding from the academic side, they just wait for something to trip and start scratching their heads going, why is this?
Do you take it to bits, or do you just add a bit more oil, WD-40 or whatever?
Or do you need to rip the whole thing out and create put a brand new switchboard and things in?
Yeah. But at the end of the day, while there was the domain knowledge, what we were really there was we served as the glue. The domain knowledge was there. That was the important bit. It was the expertise that had been learned in the field from, again, dismantling circuit breakers over years and years. Is it congealed lubrication? Is it the mechanism's just worn out? Does it need another spring? Is it the control circuit? Has the control circuit got lubrication in it?
So what was it with the data side of things that you started to develop to help in this situation?
Yeah, so it was bridging the gap. It was how do you take that large, unmanageable set of unknowns and how do you reduce it down to something manageable that then connects with your domain expertise? So that little ripple that was on the waveform, what does that actually mean? And then you go back and you say, well, we found this one in the field and we had this failure, and you say, oh, that was a flat battery, and the battery charger was actually powering the trip.
Something as simple as that.
Yeah. But then that was appearing, and then you look at this one, it's got somebody like taking a bite out of it. In fact, it's when people, it comes across as that, and you've got the human interpretation of that. Somebody's taking a bite out of it. What's that look like? Yeah. And then it comes down, it's like, that's vibration, and that shakes the trip coil, shakes the solenoid and the trip coil, and then you piece that together. So there's a bit of your own domain expertise. My own background was mechanical engineering before I got into writing software, so I knew a wee bit about it. But then when you actually got out there, and this was always the best bit of the job, speaking to the people who ended up using who were actually seeing the problems
on the front lines.
On the front line, yeah. What are your sore thumbs? Well, they weren't literally sore thumbs in most cases, but it was, I've got this, I keep seeing this shape. What does it mean? It's a little spike at the start of the waveform. What can that mean? And then the flip side was when you actually wrote the software and you got all the way through to the end and you boiled it all down to that go or no go decision support, you got to run it past the end user and they went, oh, that's brilliant. That fixes everything. They go, oh no, that's terrible. I'd never do it like that. Yeah. But it didn't matter whether it was positive or negative. The fact that they engaged was, reward enough.
Yeah, it helps close that loop off as well, because it's
closing the loop, exactly.
Great having the maths. It's great seeing the issue, but it's putting the two together to actually create the value at the end. That makes a massive difference. Because even today, a big part of what I also do is looking at these problems and going, why is there a spike there? Why is there something on the waveform or something on the electrical signature? Yeah, and try to deep dive in. And there's so many variables in the real world. It's very difficult to simulate these types of faults when you're in the labs and things like that. Yeah. You need the real world data to actually create these AIs and any sort of machine learning to actually be of use to the end users by having real world data actually feeding into them. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that was maybe one of the ways that trust got derailed early on. Maybe 20 years ago, you didn't have the sensing out in the field. Digital acquisition was too expensive, so you couldn't get enough examples. And because there wasn't much deployment of that sort of thing, there was no domain expertise to correlate it or align it with. But we're seeing a lot less of that, a lot more deployment now. So you're not doing things like resorting to training machine learning models on simulations of faults.
No.
If you think about that, that's good if you've got all the domain knowledge to produce a good simulation model. Ultimately, what you're going to be doing is recovering the assumptions of the simulation.
Yes,
Which are probably, why not just go out and use the assumptions of the simulation to look for faults.
So taking it to where we are today, how much of a change have you seen across the maths and the AI and everything that's been built over the last, say, 20 years to where we are just now?
Yeah, so I think even if you put to one side the use of extremely powerful, extremely complex neural networks, a lot of the time, I mean, before we ever go into any kind of machine learning model development, your first question is always, do you actually need machine learning here?
Yeah.
This is a power system problem, or this is a condition monitoring, generation condition monitoring problem. It's like the old saying, if the only tool you've got to hammer every problem looks like a nail, So before we start beating things with our machine learning hammer, including our own heads,
yes.
First thing you've got to do is start with just a simple rule, and if you can't beat the simple rule, there's maybe no need for machine learning.
Yeah, you need to ask that why. Like Jamie always goes on about, why, and if you can answer the why, then let's go on with it.
As
but
soon as you can stop saying why, that's
and you don't want to just jump on a bandwagon because AI, especially in these days, it's getting thrown about everywhere. It'll be an AI toothbrush that you'll have in your house, and it's not even AI at all. It's some of them are very basic, and there's a lot more, as you say, in-depth systems out there. But for us, obviously, it's all about the industrial side and trying to take this data, manage it, and collaborate lots of different data sources to each other to try and mitigate issues and keep machines running for longer, or a piece of equipment running longer. But I think in recent times, there's a buzz around AI, isn't there? Where anything can be almost classed as AI, and people are still trying to adapt into it from your day-to-day people, just your general person is just at the early stage of AI just now. And it's a new thing, and one thing goes wrong with AI, or one thing that people are using, like ChatGPT and things, it's a good model, but it's fairly basic for being public, and I think people need to understand a bit more about how really beneficial it can be rather than be scared of it. 'Cause I think a lot of people are quite scared of it at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to your original point, what have I seen that's changed? And I think it's the attitude over everything. Is the attitude that's changed. People are beginning to see that this is something that can help. It's not a niche thing. It's not a novelty. The other thing is that it's part of a solution rather than the entire solution. So this is the thing that helps you maybe solve the annoying problem that you see every couple of days on a particular machine, and it frees up your time to be able to go away and apply your engineering knowledge to solve a real problem, which can then add the real. So you're not getting distracted with the loads and loads of little problems that are maybe triggering an alarm every couple of.
This is exactly what our software, the Hills of Vision and the immune system that we're building is all about, because we look at, it must be over 4,500 machines or assets a month at the moment. And to be fair, and hopefully it remains to be the same, most of the machines are okay because these plants need to run, these power stations need to operate, the oil and gas rigs need to continue operating. And we need to manually go through that data to make sure that all the machines are in a good condition, and any sort of ones that flag up, we're deep diving into. But as this grows and as people are wanting more and more data from machines or from these assets, the teams you need to build to do this is unsustainable, and the money isn't really there from the end users to pay vast amount of people to look at this. Whereas these models and things can do the heavy lifting. That's what Hills of Vision is all about for us, is do the heavy lifting. It's not sitting there diagnosing every single fault for us, but it's doing all the heavy lifting so that it makes our life a bit easier. So it's done the heavy lifting, and we can then focus on the real problems. And we know about the sort of more minor ones that are sitting there without having to go through 4,500 job files or 4,500 data sets every single month on month. It's very interesting.
Gathering the evidence. The AI can be used to gather the evidence and kind of boil it down, and then you make the decision. You don't let a black box go away and make the decision.
Correct, yes.
Because, black box told you to jump off a cliff. Why did it do that? So, well, there might have been a bouncy castle at the bottom of the cliff, and you might be getting chased by a pack of wild dogs. But unless you have that unless you have that explanation to go with your machine's decision, you're not going to adopt it. And I guess that kind of comes to the next generation of models, predictive models, and so on. It's going to go from, if it advises an engineer on a particular maintenance path or decision strategy, why is it asked that?
Mm-hmm.
And project we're doing at the moment in power distribution, we're looking at wooden pole testing. So rural overhead lines. A company that are working with the distribution network operator that we're collaborating with has developed a hammer which will tell a linesman if a pole is what the condition of the pole is. Wow. Is it rotten inside? Or
so they can then plan that in a planned manner to get that changed out.
Do you climb the pole or not?
Yeah.
You're not going to climb a rotten pole. You're going to, leave that until it gets replaced. So
all from a hammer.
All from a hammer. Yeah,
wow.
It's a brilliant piece of equipment. But at the end of the day, if the talking hammer tells you, it doesn't talk, it talks through a phone app, tells you to climb or not climb a pole, how are you going to justify that? So what we're looking at is supporting that particular piece of development with a human, not just a human explainable, human explanation on that decision,
yes,
but also a linesman based explanation. So we've got, it comes out in human terms, but it also comes out specialised to linesman terms as well.
Yeah, so it aligns with their logic and their terminologies, and they can understand what the data is telling them. Yeah,
it may even align it in context of things they've seen before. And I guess that comes back to, you're making a decision on 4,500 machines, or you're assessing 4,500 machines, and say your AI has ranked them for you first thing every day. How is it arrived at that rank? You don't necessarily want that explanation in terms of, some ridiculous rank correlation or
overly
tail
complicated
dependency
things,
or something related to applied statistics. If you do that, the AI is going to get thrown in the bin pretty quick.
Yeah.
But if you're able to explain it and say, well, this one's lubrication, this one, we've got partial discharge, has been exhibited, it's at a low level just now, but in the past, it's peaked when the machine is under particular high loadings.
Yeah, or on starts and stops and things like that. Yeah, and you can start to really use that data again to drive the decision that needs to be made. But it's giving you that information, and let's be honest, it'll be written in simpler terms as well, so you don't have to be a complete expert at everything as well, because it's difficult to upskill so many individuals and young engineers to understand all these vast technologies and all the data sets that come off them. I think a big part of this is to keep it simple, and keep it simple with all the complex data and things being in there, but we keep it simple that not only the engineers that are looking at it can understand it, but also the end users. Because not always is the person who needs to make the financial decision to go and make a repair or go and do an upgrade or something based off this data. They also need to understand exactly what the problem is and what the data is actually saying, without it being a massive Power BI dashboard or some really overly complex looking graphs and things that just, to be honest, mean nothing to some people. And it could be frustrating, especially for engineers that have maybe been in the game for a long time, who used oscilloscopes and all this back in the day. Nowadays, you've got apps on your phone that can connect to sensors, and your computer can be used as an oscilloscope with the processing power that's in there. Some of the technologies we use is, yes, there's a fancy hardware, but the laptop's actually doing the bulk of the work, because processing power and things have just come such a long way. And it'd be very interesting to see where we will be in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. Absolutely, with mobile phone technology, with how quick that's going. We'll all be sitting there with laptops on the front lines of these sites and things, and all these complex analyzers, or will we have the computing power and the AI and things there to actually make our life a lot easier on the front lines with one device almost? Interesting to find out where that one goes.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how people's skills develop as well. Is this going to align with the natural evolution of the discipline, or could it just overwhelm people, and then we go backwards for a couple of years? If we don't do it right, we're going back to lots and lots of screens. maybe want lots of screens if you want to drill in and, do a sanity check yourself. But, if you're suddenly faced with lots and lots of screens as your front door, how do you pace this so that you... Because ultimately, it's humans, they've all got the same eyes, but then some people have got different capacities for...
Correct, yeah.
Different mental models. So
I think it'll be a big change for us with having access to all that data and the machine learning, AI and things doing the heavy lifting. Us focusing the time on the more complex faults, the more time it's spent on those complex ones, the more we understand across the industry of what these faults are, what the conditions are of it, because you've actually got more time. Whereas today, because we're still having to look at all these other things manually, you're still focusing on that task, but there's less hours available in a week across the team. And I think with the easier jobs getting done with the AI, you can really start focusing on these bigger issues, to be honest, and more complex issues to then make that side of the engineering a lot more reliable or a lot better, that you just don't have the resource and the time to put into it in today's terms. And I think for us, I think that'll be a big step for us is using it to actually focus more. And then our engineers will be better educated and have a better understanding and more experienced, because they're spending time on these complex faults rather than looking at a very minor problem or just looking at something that doesn't have a problem in the first place. Yeah.
And it closes the loop, like we were saying, you've got these really complex faults. If it can't be solved, you've got a characterizing set of data to accompany it. And then, that may start up, that's maybe starts up an area of fundamental research, which goes back to the physics of the problem, and then that synthesizes new knowledge of new types of faults. And then I think partial discharge is probably a good example of that. You'll be seeing partial discharge in the field.
Correct, yeah.
We're synthesizing it in the lab, or other people I work with have been synthesizing it in the lab, and I've also been recording it in the field as well.
Yeah.
And you see new things, and you then have to go back into the lab and see if you can replicate them, and then you can understand, what is it's causing this? Is it a particular way that the insulation's breaking down, or is it a particular operating regime that's causing it, or is it environmental conditions, or is it a combination of all of them?
Yeah, and it's feeding that information back to the manufacturers and the OEMs so that they can then improve the quality process or maybe the materials that they're using to stop this from happening, because it all comes back to getting the data in the first place for any of this knowledge to come out of it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's very interesting. So you think in the future a lot of it will be the predictive side that we'll see the next biggest step?
It could be work we're doing at the moment. We've done quite a bit on predictive analytics for things like sulfur hexafluoride escape from switchgear.
Oh yeah.
So that's obviously, there's a pressing environmental concern there as well as an operational one. You don't want to lose all your insulating gas or your circuit breaker locks out.
No.
But the next stage to that is, if you've got an idea of what your whole fleet of assets is about to do, where do you then deploy your resource? And so there's a planning or a scheduling. A scheduling piece would follow that.
Yes.
How many people do you really need? You maybe need more. How many are you planning on expanding to? What's the most efficient way of dealing with each of these assets? They might be remotely located. Do you want to go to these in stages? Is there one that you want to go to
do
first?
Like a pilot one on one instance first to almost do a proof of value or something to show the value that's there.
So we're seeing that in the power distribution, power transmission, but then they've also got some visibility of it in aviation as well. Okay. You don't want to take things out of service, because if something's not flying, it's not earning.
Correct.
So it's the same as everything else. It's exceptionally painful in aviation though, because it's the the costs will rack up a lot quicker. But how do you schedule your limited maintenance resource across, potentially a number of different threats or opportunities?
That's it.
Yeah, you might be going very close to this asset, which might be in trouble in a couple of months' time. So you might do a preemptive strike there, and then you go on to the one that's maybe needing something done the following week, and you've dealt with them. So But yeah, I think that's maybe the next one. And sorry, I've forgotten what the question was originally.
It was,
was it predictive?
with the predictive side, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say predictive and then action.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got to have your checks and balances though, and they've got to be couched in your domain expertise. So if you're going to come up with a plan, you'd better be prepared to explain why you've come up with it.
Yeah.
Again, work colleagues have done in the space industry on scheduling satellite actions. They've got automated planning because the satellite could do many, many things. Does it charge its batteries? Does it turn its solar panels towards the sun? Does it sit in the dark and go to sleep? Mm-hmm. Does it do a downlink to mission control? Does it take pictures? What order does it do these things?
So that mission controls our new. That's going to be our new remote support centre's name.
Oh, brilliant!
Yes, Jamie's going to be launching that shortly, and we'll see what NASA's got to say about that one.
Well, as long as mission control trusts what's going out there, so the plan with the concept behind the planning for the satellite scheduling was, if you've got an automatic scheduler which is telling you you're going to be doing this with an X million pound satellite, your mission control had better trust it. Mm-hmm. And in order to trust it, you've got to explain it in their terms. So this was a pretty neat piece of research in that, it's a complex scheduler. And then in order to get the human readable explanation, the scheduler then posted prompts into a large language model like GPT or BERT or something like that. And then it would come back with a human readable explanation in mission control's own language. Yeah. So I am not going to turn my solar panels to the sun at, 10 past midnight GMT. Instead, I am going to go to sleep until 2:30 GMT, and then I'm going to waken up, and then I'm going to download some photographs to mission control, and this is why I'm going to do it, because my batteries would go flat otherwise. And so, well, that's fine.
It's very clearly laid out and very precise, and it makes sense to everyone who's involved in that teams as well. Yeah.
So that was a brilliant piece of research. I'm envious that I wasn't involved in it, but that's one of the things about working in research. You see what your colleagues are doing, and then next thing you're collaborating with them. You've managed to pool what they've applied in another domain, and we're now looking at similar things, using similar things with the Smart Hammer application for the testing of wooden poles. So it's a nice
diverse mix. That you go from satellites to hitting a piece of wood with a hammer, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the thing about a career in research. You never know what you're going to end up doing. I mean, I started off in power distribution in 2004, but I took a 10-year excursion into agricultural livestock monitoring.
Wow! Yeah.
Between 2006 and maybe 2016. And we had a company. I was a co-founder in a company called Silent Herdsman. They drew on a lot of the expertise we had in power system condition monitoring, but it was applied to dairy cattle.
Yeah.
How do you manage a fleet of fairly high value assets?
Which they are. Yeah.
Which they are. I mean, if you're a farmer, it's farmer is essentially an engineer with less resources at their disposal.
Yeah.
And
no engineering teams there, is there?
No, thinner margins maybe as well. I don't know. But if you could have something that tells you to get the vet in, ahead of you facing that painful piece of remedial surgery, that was an interesting project in that, you had cutting edge wireless sensors, and we were learning, all the things, the hardware side of the business, which was not me. Tended to keep that thing at arm's length, but they were trying to figure out, how do you get a signal from the middle of the field back to the base station in the dairy parlour.
Yep.
So again, it was these things that you eventually started to see in power and energy systems.
And it's come a long way, because we've faced that challenge a number of times where it's a remote site. I mean, we're in Scotland, but if you're away from the central belt, anywhere else is almost remote with limited phone signals and things like that. And a challenge that we found that is being resolved by the industry is there's so much more satellite technology out there, LoRa, even cellular. Cellular is actually getting so much better across even some places in Scotland. So, in Starlink and things we've been using as well. So I think that side of things, I've seen a big change in certainly the last 4 or 5
Yeah,
years, and it's
yeah.
made our life a lot easier when we're trying to implement and embed these technologies, because you're not having to reinvent the wheel and say, right, how can we get the data from the field back to our mission control?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a lot easier nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, and effectively it lowers the cost of a data point.
Yes.
Which, back then you were thinking, can I get a return on this? I've invested this amount of money on putting this sensor on this asset. How long does it take for me to recoup that cost?
Yeah, well, we see that all the time where, again, even in the early days of ELSA, it was the top machines, the big massive turbines, the big massive oil pumps or the compressors and all these things, and everything else was like, there's no budget for that because these technologies are quite expensive or they're very difficult to get the comms set up. But now and more, we're getting more inquiries for, we want to actually get as much data as we can because the price has dropped, but the quality of the sensors has went up, and the way of getting communications in or out is also massively increased. And the only challenge that is nowadays is the cybersecurity side and making sure that whatever platforms you're feeding the information into is secure, and the means of getting the information in and out is also secure. Because it's still a little bit open at the moment, and although there's regulations coming into place, it's making sure everyone's aligned with that as well, because that's going to come with its own challenges with handling clients' information. Although it might only be a vibration signal or a partial discharge or temperature, that could still be used in the wrong way if someone gets access to it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when it comes back to the automated scheduling application, if you've sent all your maintenance operatives to the southeast of England and all your assets are in the northeast of Scotland, because somebody's hacked all the sensors on your network, and this automated schedulers, fair enough, it's got the best intentions, but it's working on spurious data. You've suddenly, all your staff are in the wrong place, and you're still paying for them.
Yeah,
this is an outrage. But that's where So data provenance and cybersecurity and data provenance are interlinked inextricably.
A lot of tenders we're seeing now is they're wanting to make sure that there's audits and things, and you're ISO accredited and things for these.
Right.
So that's starting to come out from the larger organisations, but as always, it'll start feeding its all the way through the entire industry, and it's a big focus for us, is making sure the cybersecurity side of things is on point, because we can't afford for a situation like that to happen, even internally, because you're using AI and things internally. It can still mess you up if something goes wrong, never mind the end users, where we certainly don't want an issue to be occurring for them. So it's food for thought, that one, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yeah. And you mentioned standards there. So obviously you've got new standards for, even before we get to standards for AI, more and more standards in the industry. How do you navigate? That's a new challenge for your engineers on the ground. How do you know what standards are applicable to a particular application? Is that something that you're
on the cyber side?
Across the whole board, more and more standards. You're going to have to pick your way through these. What applies, what doesn't.
This is where the AI helps out as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Is that the next challenge? Before you even go and implement these systems, do you need to understand, how they're going to go up against compliance?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've noticed that, as I say, the security's went higher, but also back to what you said in the beginning, it's making sure you're not just taking data for data's sake, and it's making sure that you're managing that data, and is that creating any value? If the answer is yes, then let's continue on with it. Because even bandwidths and things are another issue that's going to happen. Like, it's going to be across all industries, whether it's medicine, NHS, power generation, oil and gas, all these sites, offices, everything's going to have some sort of sensors, some sort of communication hubs that are all fighting across the same signal bandwidths. That's going to get all jammed up. So we can't afford to actually have too much data, too much useless data getting sent around. It needs to be valuable data.
Valuable data comes a day late. It's too late the hero. Yeah.
I think we've all seen that happen before.
Oh no.
So no. It's an interesting one that we've seen, because we are seeing some manufacturers using different frequency ranges to try and stay off the ones that are going to get jammed up. But there's a finite number on no matter what bandwidth and things are on. So a key one for us is making sure that anything that we are implementing on a site or an oil rig or a vessel is making sure we're maximizing the use of their bandwidth for the most amount of value back. And even finding technologies that you can fine tune the data. So do you actually need to send all the data to the cloud? No, let's have it on a hard drive locally. And if it pings an alarm or there's a threshold that's been exceeded or something, then you send that data across, and you're massively reducing the bandwidth. Because I mean, offshore oil and gas, they're already
expensive.
If anything, they're already sending so much data. Plus, they've got the Wi-Fi networks and things that are already at their sort of maximum threshold.
Yeah.
Try and send more gigabytes worth of vibration data and all this other stuff. There's just no room for it on the network.
Yeah.
And especially if, as I say, if it's on assets that maybe don't even need that, it's just someone's maybe sold them some sensors or sold them a technology, which is great for the sales guys' commission at the end of the month. But what value is that actually creating? It's maybe actually creating IT issues. And I see there have been a lot of struggles with companies implementing things because their IT teams are actually quite stretched at the moment. You know, a lot of IT teams aren't that big, even in large organizations. But all this machine learning, AI, firewalls, security, all that actually ends up on their plate, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a challenge that we haven't come across it yet, because luckily, again, with our software, we deal with all the comms going to one place, and then their system only needs to see one connection going to it. But as things grow and there's more technologies out there, these IT departments are going to be swamped. And it's how the industry is going to react to that. Are they actually going to beef that up because they might get the value?
Yeah.
Or are these men and women and people in these teams going to be really overwhelmed? And I don't know the answer to that one.
No, I mean, what about the skills development? How does it go? Yeah.
Because who's done that? Who's actually implemented all this across all these different sectors and that? No, it's evolution and it's changing every day, but no one's actually done it yet. So it'll be an interesting one for us as we're going through this journey with them as well.
Yeah, interesting times.
It is,
as they always are. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. But I think we're up on time this week. But I'd like to thank you for coming in, Bruce. It's been great to have a
thanks, Ken, for having me, and obviously thanks for the biscuit. Do I show the biscuit?
Yeah, get that on the screen before we head off. That's an absolute beast. Can you lift that up? All right.
There.
Yeah, the camera in front of you there. Yeah.
Thank you very much for my Empire biscuit. I will stuff this in my face on
we've
the
got
train home.
We've got a few people in our business that love an Empire biscuit, by the way, and when they see that, they're going to be jealous.
And thanks for my decaf tea from Grow. Thank you to Grow.
So
not frying my brain with a pint of tea. But no, thanks for having me. It's great to be down by the sea on Glasgow Fair Friday.
That's nice to be down here, isn't it? So thank you very much, and we'll catch you again next week, guys.
Thanks for...
No, that's over in a flash, isn't it?
It is, yeah.